Welcome back to the Milwaukee Market Update. We're covering real estate news and data and breaking it down to help you understand how it impacts your real estate decisions. Teaser, is Wisconsin the most searched state to move to in the U.S.?
Some things to take away from this episode. Why is housing inventory a quarter of what it was 5 years ago? What happened yesterday with the Fed meeting with interest rates? What does a competitive offer look like for buyers in the Milwaukee area today? And does Ty wear dirty rugby kits from other players?
We're here to give you the info you need to make the right decisions regarding your real estate. Should I buy a home now? Should I be selling? Is the housing market about to crash? Are these headlines I'm reading, the content I'm seeing on social media true or even relevant to me? If you're new to the show or returning because you found value in our previous videos, it would mean the world to us if you could take a second to subscribe. You can follow us at TyAsh31 and Nick Harrington28 and reach out via info@houseworkscollective.com. I'm Ty Ash.
I'm Nick Harrington.
With Houseworks Collective at Compass, your local real estate experts. All right, let's dive into our quick tips for this month. On the buyer side, this is something that's super common that I don't think every single buyer knows about before they actually start their shopping. Even if they actually bought a home, maybe even the last 3 or 4 years, is something that's called the inspection not to request amount. So this year, the state of Wisconsin released a form called the Addendum AC, which is for additional contingencies that has stuff like buyer not to request on inspection, pre-negotiated appraisal gap coverage, and the escalation clause. But specifically, I think a lot of buyers assume that there's only one of two options on inspection. You either have one or you waive it completely, but that's very far from the case. Just like the down low on what this is you can essentially write into the contract something like buyer not to request the first $5,000 in defects based on a quote from a contractor, and it just softens up the offer a little bit for the seller saying, hey, we're not going to nickel and dime you on small items, and they still have their inspection contingency. It just softens up a little bit of the negotiation we can do at inspection. So I think that's one thing to take away there is you do not have to just go ditch to ditch, either have an inspection or waive it completely. That's a way to be competitive and still protect you and your earnest money.
Yeah, I think this is something that I typically write in almost all my offers just because in the seller's market we're in today, you have to soften that inspection contingency. Mm-hmm. Most buyers aren't comfortable with completely waiving the inspection, which is completely fair. But this is a way to make a more competitive offer with an inspection contingency. And just to reiterate, how I explain this is that we're focused on those big ticket items, not nickeling and diming over light switch covers.
Yes. And
it protects the buyer. It's a more competitive offer. And again, it says that we can't negotiate on defects found from a total repair value of less than $5,000. Mm-hmm. And so we use this all the time. Most offers we write that are getting accepted have some sort of language of this nature in there.
Yeah, it's a way to try to find as much of a win-win as possible and actually get you the home without having all of that risk of a waived inspection.
Yep.
I know you've got a homeowner tip on here. What do you got?
Yeah, so I think when it comes to selling your home, you've got a lot of different options, and we've spoken to this too about going for sale by owner, using a flat fee listing agent or a full service listing agent. Mm-hmm. I think it's important to understand what your goals are, and there's probably potentially a different scenario where each might be a good fit. I was just at a showing for a duplex that's a for sale by owner.
Okay.
This home was priced $30,000 below what it should have been on the market. He paid an agent 1% flat fee to basically just put that home on the MLS. He's probably going to accept a lowball offer because he doesn't understand where he should really price it correctly. Mm-hmm. Because I guarantee his whole goal was to reduce his costs on the front end and not thinking about, I want the most money in my pocket, and instead just focusing on, I want to pay as little as possible. Because those are two different things. Paying little versus the most money in your pocket. They seem like they're the same. Yeah. But in reality, if he would have paid a full service listing agent at 6% to list his home, properly market that property, have in this market even just one open house for a full weekend, he doesn't need to communicate with all these buyers, run around, be the one that's at every single showing, reviewing all these offers, determining which is the best one. I guarantee he would have probably been able to net significantly more if you would have paid that extra 3%. And so
just to get that representation and also get that knowledge that
the
actually like
expertise.
you're paying for, and you end up getting more for it.
Definitely.
Yeah.
And so I think the for sale by owner route seems appealing to a lot of people, but under the covers, if your goal is to get the most money in your pocket when that sale is completely finished, most of the time for sale by owner is not the best route to go.
Yeah, totally agree. Yeah, and all of the complexity that goes behind actually executing this in a digital age, and knowing that the stat is that 95% of people find their home online to start. I know there's ways to get for sale by owner listings online, but it's not in the most common spaces that people are looking, especially if they're leveraging a real estate agent, which most people do,
are.
because usually the seller pays for the buyer's agent's commission.
Yep.
So
Yep.
definitely makes sense. Over on the investor side, for a quick tip, we talk about this all the time on a lot of our intro calls with our investors as we start to run the first couple deals. It's learning how to run the long-term returns on your investment property versus just focusing on the short term of year 0, year 1 down the road. What does it look like? And I think a lot of people are so focused on, I want to get to financial independence, which is usually based off what's the cash flow I can actually take out of my investment, or almost like if you're looking at the stock market, what's the dividend I get every single quarter, every single year from this investment, as opposed to looking at the other key factors and where that wealth is actually built is what's the appreciation potential of my investment? How much principal is going to be paid down by the residents that are going to be living in the property? And then also, what are just like the actual extra benefits we get from having depreciation of an asset that actually helps you on your tax season at the end of the year? I think a lot of people are very much focused, even in today's market where we know cash flow is tight because interest rates are so high, but there actually at the same time presents opportunity where there could be way more competition, but there's not because interest rates are high. Anything you want to add in terms of what you see with investors and trying to focus on long-term versus short-term returns?
Yeah, most investors that I work with, the mindset is they're investing in real estate for the goal of not having to work at one point in their life.
Yep.
And I always coach my clients that the cash flow in the short term has to work. If you're gonna buy a property where you don't see in the first 1 to 3 years the cash flow numbers that you need, it's probably not going to be a deal that makes sense. So cash flow to me is very important, but also the long-term appreciation, that 10-year, that 15-year mark is where you see these outrageous returns. When it comes time for you to actually sell that property or refinance or whatever that exit strategy looks like, that's when those returns are gained. Because now you've had a property that someone else has paid for, where you have 10 years of mortgage being paid, equity being built, natural appreciation in the market, where all of a sudden
at year 10 and year 15,
if you've got a cash outlay 5 years after you've got this money back from cash flow, everything on top of that is just gravy, and you're riding the wave of the market to get this equity back out of your property. So I think it's incredibly important to couple both the short-term cash flow and that long-term market appreciation for any deal that you're running.
Yeah, totally agree. Next up on the list, as always, we like to dive into the Metro MLS stats.
Yeah, let's go.
Let's look into these local numbers here, starting with new listings. So this is for May 2023 compared to May of last year, year-over-year numbers. New listings down 25%, 1,600 homes. That continues to be kind of like the headline overall of not enough listings. And that's down 25% to last year. We know if we look back several years ago to more healthy market, we had almost double the amount of listings in 1 month back in like 2019. Pending sales, 600 homes, up 1%. Closed sales, 1,400 homes, down 20%. Days on market until sale, 19 days versus 17 days a year ago. Median sales price, $326,000, up 9%. So I know this will be something we dig in a little bit more. People want to know how the heck can prices keep going up when interest rates are at 7%. Average sales price, $373,000, up 1.5%. Percent of original list price received, or in other terms, what percent over asking are homes going at? 103.3%, meaning 3.3 over asking versus 104.2% a year ago. Inventory of homes for sale, 2,100 listings, down 25%, very much in line with what we're seeing on the new listing number, as well as the decline in closed sales. And then finally, months of supply of inventory. We are down to 1.5 months of supply versus 1.6 months last year. Healthy is generally seen as being above 4 months of supply, so sitting even below half a month of the inventory relative to how fast these homes are being getting accepted offers on the market. So that's just the overview here. I already mentioned it. I've kind of already pre-selected what I want to talk more about. New listings. What are you seeing out there? Because even like we look at this little line chart, what are you seeing for new listings?
Yeah, I think it's been a very similar story for the last 4 episodes that we've done, where there's just not enough inventory hitting the market right now to meet the demand. And so this lack of new inventory hitting is causing sale prices to continue to go up because you've got a large buyer pool of people that are after homes in Milwaukee, not enough homes to meet that demand. With new listings, the thing that I'm seeing is new listings that are priced correctly, that are clean, are gone within 1 to 3 days. Yeah. Literally, depending on the area and the location. 3 that come to mind for me that I ended up writing offers on for buyers this last week. One of them was in New Berlin, listed at around $400K. One in Tosa, listed at around $400K. And then the third one, I can't remember the details of it. On the market, we went to a showing that first day. Yeah. They had 15 offers for one of them, 10 offers for the other, and 7 for the other within 24 hours. Yeah. So it's extremely competitive because there's just not that new inventory that buyers can really pick and choose from.
Yeah. So far, I've been talking to a couple of my lender friends, and essentially what we've come up with as a phrase right now is only the strong survive. So the best thing I can say right now is you are going to be competing with 10 to 20 people on each of these homes. We gave the quick tip at the very beginning of this of understanding how to soften up your offer but still protect your earnest money. It comes into consistency, and it comes to circling back after, unfortunately, maybe your offer didn't get accepted. Your agent needs to be calling the other agent who has the listing and figuring out where did we rank, because we generally know what matters is price, contingencies, and how quickly you're closing. Financing plays a role too. If you're not understanding where you're falling in the mix amongst those 10 to 15 offers, and you don't know that you're sitting in like the top 3, you know you're going to see those buyers again on a future listing. So getting that feedback is going to be super critical when inventory opportunities are so low.
Yeah, I also think about that too on that note that you're typically competing with the same buyers on almost every transaction. If you're looking in Tosa at a 4-family, you're going to be competing with those same other 8 offers for the next one that pops up, or in Cudahy or whatever it is. So to that same level, if you write a competitive offer and the agent is open enough to say that you guys were in number 2 position, you know, that means if you write that similar offer, you're kind of the next one in line because that first offer got accepted. That guy's now removed from the buyer pool. So, I mean, the key for buyers that are finding success is they're also understanding that right now there's a bit of a premium in owning a home, and they're okay paying above market price. And if that's something that is difficult for you to swallow as a buyer right now, it's going to be difficult for you to find success in this market if you are not willing to pay at or above list price if it's a competitive listing that's only been on the market for a couple days.
Yeah, totally agree. So related to this new listings, we've got our inventory, so active inventory available for sale here at the end of May. Again, 2,200 listings, down 25% to a year ago. The 12-month average now is at down 18% versus a year ago. As we look at it, it's kind of flatlining here based on this new listing activity. And unfortunately, I think as we look at this, it's going to be the norm. And I think a lot of people are saying like, and I'm actually seeing it, some people are coming back into the market in terms of like buyer demand because they're understanding how this relates in terms of inventory available for sale and that it's not improving. We're not going to see flattening of prices or a drop in prices unless this inventory, essentially, if we went back to 2015, there was 8,000 listings at the middle of the year in 2015.
2,000?
And we're at 2,000. And the housing market was functioning well at that point. Prices were going up at that point. We are literally at a quarter of that amount of inventory for homes. Trust me, we'll let you know if inventory starts getting up into the 8,000 range and if you might want to be concerned that you're buying at the bubble, because it's hard to say that there's a bubble and there's literally nothing out there to buy.
Yeah, and when I look at this chart, to me, what we're seeing here, it's inventory of homes for sale, and it kind of looks like a sine wave. It goes up and down because of the seasonality of Milwaukee. You're going to have a lot more inventory of homes in the warm months versus the winter months.
Yep.
But what we're looking at is the overall trend of where those are going down. And if we just look back 2015 to now, overall inventory has slowly declined, but it's been going a wave up and down with a slow decline. What is concerning to me looking at this is we are right now in the spring market. It is June. It is almost summertime. This historically, looking back the last 5 to 10 years, is when we start to see a significant uptick of inventory of homes on the market. And if we look back 1 month, 2 month, and 3 month, it's probably been a delta of less than 5 to 10%.
There's usually supposed to be 25 to 50% more inventory in the middle of the year than in the winter months of the year. And we are right now looking at essentially flat to the beginning of where we started this year. That's just very unhealthy.
Yep.
And where that gets us to on the very last slide here is median sales price. What we've seen this year is one of the more rapid rises in terms of from the beginning of the year to where we sit now of how fast these prices are going up. $326,000 is our median price right now versus $300,000 a year ago. I feel like we were having home buyer workshops and we were having these intro conversations with buyers saying, I know it doesn't feel good to feel like you're overpaying by going 5% over asking, but the buyers who pulled the trigger a year ago just made a net, 3% increase in their home's value just based on literally living in their home for a year. If they overpaid, in quotes here, if you're not looking at the YouTube video, overpaid, they're now 3% positive. And the trend right now, the last 12 months, median price has been increasing 9.4% on average. What that kind of looks like right now is we're going to maybe see another year where 324 ends up being another $32,000 that gets added to people who own their homes next year. So really much of the same as we kind of just look at those three things, new listing, active inventory, as well as just the median prices going up over time. Let's change course a little bit here into the investment space, specifically two-family in the Milwaukee County area. So just starting with some of the stats that we have here on the first page. Absorption rate or months of supply, essentially 1.5 months of supply, sitting about where single family is. The median days on market sitting at 7 days, 7 days on market. So the typical home is not even on the market. Compare that to the average days on market at 31 days. So super fast moving. Then as we look at the median sales price for a duplex here in Milwaukee County, up to almost $200,000 versus $173,000 a year ago. That's up 15%. The values of the investment properties here in the area are going up almost twice as fast as the single family space. So if that speaks to the level of competition we have in investment space, I don't know what else does. The median list price, $145,000 versus that sale price of $200,000. That's like almost 20% over asking when you kind of compare those. I'm sure that's not what's actually coming to fruition in terms of the percent of list price received, but kind of interesting to see those two metrics. Obviously, there might be some of the inventory that's not actually selling. Looking at active listings or inventory, we're sitting at down 33% in active listings. New listing activity, down 38%. And then as a result of not having enough inventory here in the multifamily space, driving up those prices, sold listings down 44% in the month of May versus May of last year. So not enough to go around. I think more and more, a lot of this inventory is getting sold off market or getting sold in different spots. A lot of people are just hunkering down and saying, man, like we said in the quick tips, my cash flow is okay because I bought a year ago, 2 years ago, but if my value of my property is going up 16% a year, I think I'm going to be okay at year 5 and 10 in terms of just the lack of inventory that's out there. Anything that you want to note on just the statistics or what you're seeing in the investment space?
Yeah, I would say the investment space continues to be competitive for duplexes, especially that are in clean, good condition. I see a range vary though. Typically, if it's a distressed duplex, it's going to sit on the market for a little bit longer than one that's just turnkey, ready to go. I really feel like a lot of this is also being driven by interest rates, where most of the inventory are people that have purchased this 3+ years ago. So they're locked into a sub 4% interest rate.
Yeah.
So for them, the returns are great compared to if they were to go buy something now unless it's in a cash purchase.
It kind of removes 1031 as even an option right now because you just know you can't find a 10% cap rate deal out there.
Yeah, exactly.
Because the rates are at 7.5%.
Right. And so I think where I'm seeing most of the inventory coming, it's from people that are looking to exit from the investment space. Maybe it's time for them to retire. Maybe they've done well and they're like, this is a good run that we had and we're just looking to like kind of clean our hands, collect our winnings and go.
Yep.
That to me seems to be what most of the inventory is when we ask the listing agent, why is this seller selling? A lot of it's people that are ready to just kind of be done with investing.
Yeah.
And so that to me also tells me too that if that's kind of the persona of the seller, there's fewer people that are looking to exit investing than get into it. It seems like it's a lot less. We have sellers that are like, I've got a bunch of properties and I'm using this to buy a new one.
Moving and shaking. Yeah.
Yeah. So I think that's also kind of limiting the seller's pool too of people that with investment properties and why we're seeing not as much inventory as we have historically.
And I think there even might be some fear out there. I think everyone knows right now the fears in the commercial space, which is where people usually exchange their 2 to 4 unit for and then trade up into a bigger building like an 8 unit or 16 unit, bigger deals, get into syndications. A lot of people are nervous about office space in the commercial industry. Why would you trade up into something that has some really obvious negative factors about it? Why would you list your property to go do a 1031 exchange right now and go buy into a bigger deal that actually has a lot of risk right now in terms of the demographics and the macro factors? So I think there's even that, like, why would you trade up out of something that's doing really well into something that everyone has fears about?
Yeah, that's interesting because I feel like historically that was the path. Like you collect some small multifamilies, 1031 into something bigger, and now that 1031 into something bigger, the returns aren't quite as there with interest rates. No one's going into commercial, so it's like, what's that play now? Hold on to your properties.
Totally agree. I mean, just to summarize here, I mean, we kind of talked about all these things right now. Like, competition's going to continue on the single family home buyer side. Competition is going to continue on the multifamily side for investors. Sellers, it's still a great time to buy. I mean, even with these interest rates, there are more than enough buyers that want your home. Any other just like anecdotes you just want to toss in before we move forward and what it means for our buyers, sellers, and investors?
Let's get into that.
Yeah. Okay. So like, what are you seeing for average offers per listing right now?
Yeah, I kind of spoke to this too. So I would say, again, if it's a property that's in good shape, it's clean, single family wise, I'm seeing it's incredibly competitive for single family homes.
Yep.
It's rare if there's not more than 5 offers on a home, honestly.
Yeah.
If it's priced well in a sought after area, and it looks good and is somewhat move-in ready. But even so, there was a property that I was at, South Milwaukee. It needs really to be entirely redone. Cosmetic flip needed. It was priced well. They had 8 offers on the table for that in the first 24 hours on a property that historically wouldn't have been super competitive just because of the condition it was in.
Right.
So I'm even seeing kind of a shift too, where buyers are almost like, you know what? I'm okay if I need to do some upgrades to the home, if that means I can maybe get a better price on the home.
Yeah.
But those are also still very competitive too.
Yep.
The buyers that I'm seeing that are winning, the buyers that I'm seeing are having success, they're okay getting rejection. Yep. They're okay that they might not get an offer accepted on their first, second, or third one, because it's the long game right now for buyers. And I think too, leaning into what their agent recommends as far as if there's a home that you love, that you're like, this is the home I need, this is what I want, let's throw everything at it, being okay doing so to get that home that you want.
Yeah. I would say, just like speaking about contracts that win, our job as agents isn't just to be a robot and say, this is what's going to be accepted on the very first offer you write, because there are emotions at stake. And there's also just like mindset at stake of like coaching them through. And that's why we use that rating scale out of 10 when we finish these showings. Be like, if you're telling me like literally it's the second showing you did and it's a 10 out of 10 for you, like, I need this house, like, we can coach you to get you there and tell you what that offer might need to look like. But if you're just like doing your first couple of showings and it's time to like work through the process, it's very important that we don't just like remove all the stops, because we can tell you what it's probably going to have to take. And usually we're being transparent saying, we don't know if this one's going to get accepted, but what's important is getting in that feedback loop of doing the reps, going on the showing, writing the offer, getting feedback from the seller's agent, so we really understand, like, was your offer, and even though it felt comfortable, what is going to be uncomfortable but still protect you at the same time. I think like those are the contracts that are winning. It's like it's that third or fourth offer that you write when you finally have found what you thought was before we rode on and it wasn't competitive enough and it was maybe more of like an 8 out of 10 kind of home for you and your needs and your wants, you finally have seen what does the inventory look like. You've been on the market for 30 to 60 days. And you're like, that's it.
Yep.
That's what I was looking for. Ty, what do we do? I know we've tried this and it didn't work. Should we do this? Buyers start telling us, should we do this?
Yeah.
Like that's what the winning offers start looking like, is the collaboration between agent and client.
Yep. Love it.
Yeah. So that's kind of what we're seeing right now. Let's just take a quick pause. What are you guys seeing out there, maybe as clients, as consumers out in the market? We'd love to know what's important to you. Do you see something different in the data? Are you seeing something anecdotally in your own neighborhoods? We'd love to see it down in the comments below, and just get your take on what you're seeing locally in your own neighborhoods. Moving on to our local headlines here in the Milwaukee area. I know you dropped this in. Downtown needs more houses in order to meet the 2040 plan set out by the mayor.
Yeah, so I think this is also, couldn't be any more topical to what we're seeing with the stats. There's very much a housing shortage in Milwaukee. There's such a demand for buyers, not enough new listings hitting the market. And I think the Milwaukee Business Journal summarizes this very well, that says there is a giant need for new housing, especially downtown. Around 15,000 new downtown housing units are needed by 2040 to support the goal of doubling the downtown population to 40,000 residents.
Yep.
That's a lot of new housing.
Yeah.
15,000 new units for people to live in, whether that's rentals, condos, single families, townhomes. But this is, I think, a great strategy, and I love that they understand that more housing is needed, because without it, there's going to continue to be this difficulty and this giant demand for buyers unless new housing starts being created and built. And
in all honesty, I mean, as we look through this article, though, a lot of the housing units they're going to create, though, are going to be multifamily. It's not going to be that traditional, let's just make a few more single family houses. Where are they going to put that downtown? Right. They're going to be making more rental units. So if you want to understand what are people actually building today in terms of the construction companies, all of them, they're not building single family homes for you to own. They're building properties for you to rent from, so you can be a renter for life, because there's returns there, there's investors there for it. In some cases, the younger demographic is appreciating that. We have that millennial demographic. So I think it's super important to note inventory, even though this is a great article that we want to build more housing units to make housing more affordable, it's making your rents more affordable, not your home ownership more affordable.
Yep.
And home affordability is only going to continue to decrease on the purchasing side.
Yeah.
So I think that's one note that I just kind of take out of that article.
Yeah.
What else we got here? You got any other takes?
Well, then going from this too, you've got an article you're going to mention on also, but Milwaukee just approved a 25-story high-end apartment tower in the Lower East Side. That's going to go between Farwell and Curtis.
Okay.
And so we've seen a lot of new development forecasted for the East Side, a lot of these new luxury high-rise apartments. There's a hotel going on Brady Street. There's this 25-unit complex going up. We've seen in the last 5 to 10 years even further developments in this area too. So I think it's interesting that they talk about the need for housing, and then here we are, the city approving the housing. I think it's great.
318 unit building, and it also has a surface parking lot, which is definitely needed over in that area of Farwell and Brady area. Definitely need more parking availability. But I mean, if we look at this, great, we got 318 more housing units coming, and we're only short 6,000.
Yeah.
So and that'll be here in 5 years.
This is also something it says too. Rental rates consistent with other new high-end buildings, about $3 per square foot. So a 1,000 square foot unit would cost about $3,000 a month.
Perfect.
So that's also going to be on the higher end, I would say, of what apartments will cost here in Milwaukee.
Yeah.
I'm sure it's going to be beautiful and a great space. I think, though, this helps to me with creating the Lower East Side as a more desirable place, though. The more sort of development, the more new construction we have. I don't know if we talked about the Wisconsin Center and the plans there that they're doing and just revitalizing the Milwaukee downtown. And I don't think it even needs revitalization. That's not the right word, because I feel like if you're revitalizing something, it means that it's not in a good spot to begin with.
Yeah.
But I just love that there's
it's like a repurposing towards what people actually want to go do and see for their evening nightlife. And it's we have this business district that kind of goes silent, and it's completely surrounded by Brady Street, Water Street, the Third Ward, all this really fun stuff to do. It's how do you kind of bring it all together and make it essentially connect the dot between
Yeah.
Cathedral Square and the third ward. It's
Yep.
like this like little like black hole of nothing, going on in evenings
Yeah.
that they could totally be leveraging right now.
Yeah,
that
absolutely.
kind of includes Wisconsin there, Wisconsin Avenue. We also got the trade autographed collection by the Pfizer Forum. So that new hotel, they put that thing up quick.
It was so crazy. My girlfriend lives right by there, so I drive by that building almost every single day, and I felt like they were building it for a year, and it was just the shell and like
Yeah.
an empty cement columns, steel beams, and then all of a sudden a week later it was finished.
Yeah. And I think more to come in this area. Like there's a lot of gravel areas there around the Deer District and the Pfizer Forum. I think they want to add a lot more retail stuff to just make it a one-stop shop for events, for concerts, all that kind of stuff. And it looks like these are going to be listed at the $300 to $400 range. Not bad. I think might have
For
to,
hotels?
Yeah, for the
Yeah,
hotel
that's pretty
rooms.
good.
I might have to give it a shot for the old staycation.
Yeah, they also have an underground walkway for the basketball players on
No
the
way.
away team to go from that hotel to Pfizer Forum.
What?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. That's pretty cool.
It's also it's like a 10 feet tall walkway, so they all fit
There
in
you
there.
go.
Yeah.
Okay. Yes. Nice. Next up, this is actually kind of going from like national into local. We've got a chart pulled up here of essentially how hot is the Milwaukee housing market. And I think this is crazy to see. It has a rating essentially 0 to 100. Milwaukee sits at a 71. Which is rated as very competitive. Many homes get multiple offers, some with waived contingencies. That checks.
Yeah,
That
no
tracks.
surprise there.
Average home sells for about 2% above list price and go pending in about 37 days. Again, I think pending in this Redfin data, that's probably how quickly it's closing. Probably not how fast that it's actually like getting sold on the market.
Mm-hmm.
And then we actually look at hot homes can sell. So hot homes defined as probably like the upper 25th percentile, and what we're seeing as those nicest listings that are getting snatched up in 1 to 3 days with an accepted offer can sell for about 8% above list price and go pending in about 23 days again. Like there are 21 to 30 day closes. So literally a house can be listed on the market and being moved into by the new buyer in less than 30 days. So it's crazy how fast you can move. I guess it's kind of good for some of the relocation buyers we help of how quickly they can actually make a move and buy a house.
Yep.
But they have to understand what that competitive offer looks like. But actually, transitioning, a little segue here into relocation and what's actually going on demographically in terms of like where are people moving in and out from in terms of at a state level. I've got the graph here of the nation. Wisconsin is actually amongst probably I'd say about 40% of the states that's actually seeing more people searching to move here and move in order of purchasing in the state of Wisconsin. And as you look at all states surrounding there, all the other Midwest states are either flat or declining in the amount of people looking to move there. Is Wisconsin the best Midwest state right now?
If we look at this data, it's hard to say no.
Yeah.
I'm a little bit surprised that people are moving to Nebraska. You know, just I've drove through Nebraska quite a bit. Not very exciting. Omaha's a fine city, but I think that people are moving. This data is interesting to me to see that there's more people moving to Wisconsin and then the surrounding states, Minnesota, Iowa, Indiana, Chicago, or Illinois.
Yeah.
People are moving from there. No surprise that the deepest blue, looking at this chart, it's a state map of the U.S.
Yeah.
Has a color for if people are moving from it or moving to it.
Yeah.
It's color coded. The one that most people are moving from is California.
Yep.
I feel like no surprise there with COVID and people moving away. Other states that people are moving to, it looks like Florida is the most sought after state in the U.S. right now, moving to.
Followed by Texas.
Texas, Arizona, the Southeast, the Carolinas, Tennessee. So I think it's healthy that people are moving to Wisconsin. It's great to see that for the state and for Milwaukee specifically.
And I know we touched on it before, and Redfin had additional data on this, but the top cities being moved to from Wisconsin and Milwaukee are all Florida, Arizona, and that's pretty much it. Like all of like your like retirements, like snowbird states. Like people are living because they're in that the baby boomer generation, and they're moving there to be full time. They're probably selling a home and moving to a home they already own there. So like they're just like moving there permanently. So it's interesting to see that. And honestly, a lot of our migration is coming from states like Illinois, just our close neighbors, and coming up here, whether it's for the taxes or for whatever reasons, job employment, now being able to be remote. But overall, most of the states here are actually looking a little bit more like flattish to very small amount of growth in terms of, moving away from there. So I think obviously we saw a lot of trends around people relocating for work, maybe a little bit of slowdown there, especially if we've had a little bit of, people being called back into not being able to be fully remote, but being more hybrid.
Yep.
Let's see, what do we got next here on the dock? Rental costs. So going back to like our investor world, go through this for us.
Yeah, so I got an article here that shows states with the highest year-over-year rent growth and states with the highest decrease in rent over year. So the ones that are increasing the most and the ones that are decreasing the most. And this is just at the state level. And if I just list off the states that are having the highest rental growth, South Dakota, Mississippi, Iowa,
there we go,
Arkansas, New Hampshire, North Dakota, Nebraska, Michigan, North Carolina, Indiana. And when I think about these 10 states I maybe just listed off, those are the ones that rent is growing the most. Let me then go to the ones where it's decreasing the most. Idaho, Nevada, Arizona, Washington, Illinois, Texas, Kansas, Maryland, Oregon. When I think about these states where we're seeing the most growth in rent, they're not the states that would ever come to mind for me where you'd see this. South Dakota, Mississippi, Iowa, Arkansas. I don't want to say that those are forgotten states, but they're a bit of forgotten states. And if you look at the inverse, Idaho, Nevada, Arizona, Washington, those are more of like the headline states. Also places that you think of historically as like Phoenix, Arizona, Seattle, Washington, Boise, Idaho, Chicago, Illinois, Texas. So to me, it's the markets that are growing in rent are those, I don't want to say like non-sexy markets. But they're kind of markets that get forgotten about. And the ones that are decreasing are the ones that people, when you think of the big cities in the U.S., those are the ones where we're seeing the decrease in rent. And so it's just kind of interesting. The states that are increasing in rent are the states like Mississippi,
Right. And honestly, we have this next chart here that kind of correlates this. It's rents posted the largest drop since 2020 in May here in 2023 at down 0.6%. And I mean, we were all the way back, up, even just a year ago, rents were still climbing in the double digits nationally speaking, and now they're coming back to earth a little bit. But as always, what we always like to do when we talk through this data is what's under the covers. Like, walk us through essentially what we see as we break it out by region.
So if you look nationally, rents are declining. But if we break this down by West, Northeast, South, and Midwest, where we're seeing the most decline is going to be in the West at 2.1%. And in the South, which are just up 0.8%. But then if we look at the Northeast and the Midwest, rent is actually up there 4.9% and 5.4%.
And classic story of the
West Coast going down 2%. That's going to be where most of the population lives. So that's nationally going to have the biggest draw on the national numbers. But again, it's kind of going back to these markets that are in the Midwest and the Northeast that are just kind of forgotten about. We're seeing the healthiest rent increase compared to these Western regions.
So I guess in this case, we're seeing up 16% in duplex values year over year. And then we're also seeing rents here in the Midwest climbing by on average 5%. Looks like it's long-term tailwinds that we continue to see here, which we've talked about. Let's move on to a few national headlines. I think the biggest one going on right now, Fed pausing interest rate hikes. Dive into that for us.
So the Fed met yesterday. The story really this whole year has been rising interest rates leading to a short-term bank crisis, leads also to buyers having a difficult time purchasing because their purchasing power has been reduced with interest rates. Inflation's been going up. The Fed's way to fight inflation is raising interest rates. They just met yesterday. They're putting a pause on interest rate hikes.
There you go. I think a lot of people are excited about that.
So I think that's the big takeaway is that we're pausing interest rate hikes for now. We'll see what's going to happen in the next couple months and later in the year. But I think what most people like is just predictability and an understanding of where are things going to go. And if we could predict that, it's going to make everyone a lot easier. And so putting a pause on this, I think just kind of qualms everyone's feeling that, let's see these rate hikes, what's going to happen from them already. And let's just kind of put a pause on everything. So it was really good news for me to see this.
15 months of consecutive interest rate activity. And overall, I think the markets, as you look at like the S&P, which kind of tracks just like the general stock market, people are excited. We're actually we actually officially came out of a bear market here, and we're back into, trending up, where we've come up 20% from the lows of last year. So
amazing.
A lot of the market's responding, and feeling very positive about a lot of those pieces. I guess some of the topics as we go through, like, I think that sentiment, and for some reason everyone knows about that now, even like the average person kind of knows, like, oh, they did something with like rates, and I'm pissed because my interest rates are going up, even though they're, they don't necessarily impact the direct consumer. Let's dive into some of these other stats on the national end. The first thing, we actually were asking around a couple of our buddies that are good at looking at this kind of data, so they pulled these charts for us from Statista, really talking about consumer debt. U.S. consumer debt piles up to $17 trillion. Consumer debt makes up mortgages. Apparently that's consumer debt, even though it's also their housing, home equity line of credit, auto loans, credit cards, student loans, and then other, wherever the heck pulls into that. So what's your observations as you look at this rainbow chart here of all these things kind of going up?
Yeah, no surprise that consumer debt has increased. I think historically we're going to see consumer debt always increase. But what I want to see is the trends of how they've increased, what's increased by more. It looks like mortgage has had this largest increase. And if this includes interest rates, that makes sense.
Yep.
Also, that includes home prices appreciating, which it does. That makes sense. HELOCs, home equity lines of credits, we've seen a slight that line's getting thinner and thinner as it goes on, which probably makes sense. Less people are taking out lines of credit because interest rates are higher. That money isn't as cheap to use. Auto loans have increased too, partially probably because
used cars
are so expensive.
Yep.
Credit card debt stayed relatively the same over the last 20 years. Pretty interesting to me there. Student loan, obviously that's gone up, and people haven't paid their student loans in the last 3 years now because of the forbearance. So
yeah, they haven't necessarily been growing, but more is just getting added to the pile in terms of what's in forbearance.
Yeah. And then other, which who knows what makes up other.
I think my biggest note on this is, I think they try to put this piles up. It's a negative sentiment, but most of the increase here appears to be mortgage debt that over the last couple of years just got locked in at 3% interest rates. And now they've just fixed in their housing cost for a very long time because no one actually wants to give up that 3% interest rate. So I think overall, a lot of people just made really great financial decisions, even though maybe not strategically, just like luckily they just saw that it was affordable and acted on it. I think that's a positive. Going back to your credit card debt, we've got this other chart here of Americans are far from maxed out on credit card debt. So much more positive sentiment and storyline here. What are we seeing on this chart?
Credit card balance of all U.S. consumers has stayed relatively flat the last 20 years.
While their limits have actually increased. Yep.
Yes, we have a massive spread between credit card limit allowance and then what the actual balance is.
How big's that spread?
Credit. It's about $3.5 trillion.
Oh, just $3.5 trillion. That's it.
Yeah, not just only.
Yeah.
And so I think it's interesting to me. I kind of would have predicted that credit card balances over time would go up, but we're seeing it's very, very flat. But also, the lender that spoke to us about this yesterday, one thing he mentioned is that U.S. consumers have a large delta of allowable credit card debt. And one thing that he spoke to, we should maybe get him on here for one of these videos.
Oh, yeah.
But he said that when the student loan forbearance gets turned off, people will start paying those loans. They're not used to it. And we might start to see this credit card debt start to increase as now that they have to still pay for their living, and credit cards might be
the lifestyle inflation that they allowed because they weren't making those monthly payments on student debt.
Yeah,
for
exactly.
Sure. So yeah, that's definitely one thing to note. But when we look at like the size of that debt relative to the total consumer debt out there, it's relatively a small portion of it. However, it's obviously isolated to a very small percentage of our demographic in terms of age of the consumer, usually the consumer who's about to try to buy a home. So it'll be interesting to see how that flows through. So kind of tied to the rates we talked about, let's talk about inflation. So obviously we got a really good update on inflation overall, coming in at the total level at 4%, mostly driven by energy being significantly down to a year ago. Because of this good news on inflation, 4%, it's not quite at that Fed target of 2% is what they want to get back to. I think one of the things that everybody's watching on this, though, is shelter. And really the core inflation, which is that all items minus food and energy, has remained sticky. Shelter is still sitting at about 8% versus a year ago. I think there's a lot of back and forth around. Obviously, there's not like the best tracking. I think there's a lot of sources out there like Zillow, more real-time availability data that's showing that this is already coming down. We just saw the rent decreases coming down at a national level, actually starting to be negative. We're seeing a lot of positive indicators that we're getting there. And I think that has led to essentially the decision we finally got from the Fed to hold off, to wait and see what should they do next with interest rates. Anything to add here on the inflation side?
No, I think you summed it up well.
Perfect. And then we just have the chart pulled up here. Again, we've essentially month over month, we went from 4.9 last month to up 4% versus a year ago. This month, it looks, as we look forward into the month of June, they're forecasting it to come down to 3.6. It's always important essentially that we just beat the overall consensus forecast, because people just want certainty. People want to be right. So as long as we continue to hit these forecasts, again, the forecast for the month of May was 4.3, and we actually just beat it here at 4%. We just want to keep beating that, and that usually ends up being good for the stock market, good for consumer sentiment, and it keeps the economy humming. If we keep having that happen, though, guess what happens to home prices and everybody's feelings about buying their house? We're good to go. So translate that back to what we're really trying to understand here.
This chart that you have pulled up, it's just the inflation rate for the last, it looks like 2 years.
Yep.
Starting at 9.1% in April or May of last year, 2022, all the way down to 4%. It just shows each month a box, and it's slowly declining.
Just slowly coming down over
I think it's
time.
pretty interesting that the Fed, they know what they're doing. To some sense,
a lot of people don't think so.
They put a lot of pressure on the banks doing this, but it is interesting that they made the call to raise interest rates with the whole goal of reducing inflation. And looking at this chart of inflation by month declining month over month over month, they did what they wanted to do.
It's figuring it out, and a lot of it we knew this was going to be sticky. So I think people were just hesitant for how fast and for how long they did it without just waiting to see what happened in shelter. It's working, and honestly, as we look at the next thing we're going to talk about is mortgage interest rates. We're sitting at 6.97%. This is from Mortgage News Daily. Again, essentially at 7% rates. I think what I find super interesting, and I think this is a tell in terms of what we think will happen in the near future, is a fixed rate mortgage is at 6.97. A 5-year, meaning it's locked in for 5 years, adjustable rate mortgage is only at 6.91. You're not getting that much better of a deal to do adjustable rate mortgage right now. Why? Because there's a really good chance that rates come down in the near future. But in all honesty, if rates come down in the near future, I'm very concerned that we see what we're seeing anecdotally here in Wisconsin and in Milwaukee. We go from 20 buyers in every property to 40 because now the affordability goes up. So I do think for the short term right now, it doesn't feel great, but 7% interest rate seems to be something that's at least somewhat keeping the competition at bay, because we're still seeing a lot of crazy stuff out there in contingencies. Next up, and this is for some of the sources that I follow from Housing Wire. I think it's Logan Motoshami or something. He's like a really great forecaster and runs a lot of data sets. The number one thing we're trying to track right now that actually shows the economy softening is the unemployment rate. Nationally, we're still sitting at a 3.7% unemployment rate, which is historically low. Usually you don't see recessions and stuff start to rear their head until you start seeing unemployment rates closer to 4.55%. And here we go, Wisconsin, 2.4% unemployment. That's almost a third of the unemployment rate of the rest of the country, meaning we have tons of people that are able to find jobs. We have a lot of people making income, whether they're working multiple jobs or whatever else. That's got to be one of the most underlying reasons for why we continue to see a super healthy local economy. I mean, it's summertime, so people are going to go spend their money or whatever just because they want to get out of the winter months. But 2.4%, we're a long ways away from essentially seeing here in Wisconsin of any sort of slowing economic activity, and it's showing in our housing market. So let's kind of, debrief all of this stuff included, the MLS stats as well as all the national, local headlines. What's this mean for buyers?
Yeah, for buyers, I think the key as a buyer that's finding success is going on showings. I think you nailed, we talked about this today, but going on showings, getting comfortable with writing offers. So when that one home does show up, you're ready to go and you're ready to write competitively.
Yeah.
And that understanding that a winning offer is probably going to be over asking price, soften contingencies, and having that conversation with your agent earlier than later to understand if that's something you're comfortable with and what the specifics and nuances of are. But that's really where buyers are succeeding right now. Is they're
they're
paying above
participating.
list price.
Only the strong survive. Like, you've got to be in the market for 3 months right now to make one stick.
Yeah,
it's just it
definitely
is what it is. Too bad. If you want it to be different, too bad.
Yeah,
like it just is what it is. On the seller side, we already talked about it. If you want to move up, if you need to move up, it is still a fantastic time. Obviously, your biggest challenge right now as a home seller is most likely
finding
you're a home buyer
Yeah.
yourself. So like, there's a lot of options we can talk about in terms of, honestly, buyers will clamor over if you want to do an off market or something like that, get the perfect closing date, get the perfect terms. You're still going to get market price.
Yep.
And have maybe a little less frenzy. You're not going to have 100 people trouncing through your home over the course of 24 hours and completely, screwing up your weekend or whatever else it is. Like, there's a lot of options where we can time that up. There's bridge loan products. You probably have access to a home equity line of credit. There's a lot of great lenders offering great products for you to get that solution so you can be competitive writing as a buyer. You're going to be more competitive than those 3% down conventional buyers that are out there with all the equity you have in your home today. You just need to sit down, understand your options, and really understand what equity is available to you in your home to leverage. And then talk to me, investors. What should they know about what's going on in the market right now?
Yeah, I think in the investing space, Milwaukee is very attractive, especially because we look at the price point for average duplex, about $190K.
Yep.
Compare that to nationally, it's got to be lower than most other states.
For sure.
Look at where rents are going. On average, they're increasing in the Midwest. They're going up 4%, and Milwaukee being the 7th most competitive rental market in the U.S., that yields that as well, too. So those two things, to me, make Milwaukee specifically a very attractive place.
How many new construction duplexes have you seen recently?
That's a good question. I've seen
not many.
No, I've seen a lot of single-family HUDs going up, like housing urban developments. I haven't seen a lot of duplexes going up for that. But honestly, I don't think I've seen a new development duplex.
And that creates
ever.
scarcity. And that's what makes it such a great asset, and why prices are going up is because you cannot cash flow on single family. Even here in the Midwest, there's just not enough of these duplexes, and people are locking up, and they're going to keep them forever until they decide they have something better to invest in and they're moving up. Or maybe
retire.
they pass away or retire or just get sick and tired of it.
Yeah.
But in that case, it's probably going to be an asset you have to put some work into, like you described earlier. Other than that, what's new?
What is new? I golfed last week, 2 weeks ago. So I got new clubs, as you know, and we talked about Southwest damaged my clubs, paid me out. I shot a 39 on 9 holes. So I was about 4 over par. So I was pretty happy with that. Also, my girlfriend and I spent a weekend up in Door County. First time making it up there.
How was that?
It was fun.
Yeah.
It's a sleepy little community. People call it. I've heard people call it the Hamptons of Wisconsin.
Okay.
I don't know if I've never been to the Hamptons.
Where's
so
the
I
Hamptons?
can't.
Is that like around New York?
New York,
Okay.
yeah, like upstate New York City. But yeah, I don't know if I call it the Hamptons of Wisconsin, but it's beautiful. It's gorgeous.
I feel
Great
like
hiking.
it's like Florida of Wisconsin, except for like it doesn't have like 100-degree weather and it's easy to get around. There's not as much traffic.
Yeah.
Because it's not the easiest place to get to. It's easier for people here local in Milwaukee to get to, but it kind of keeps the outsiders away of different states and people from Illinois, for example, from getting up there. But
How about you, man?
I'm trying to even think what the heck I've done the last month or so.
Well, we bought a flip.
We bought a fix and flip. That's right. So we've got that. We just closed on that on Monday. So been super busy with that. I'm trying to think of anything else that I've done other than just working like a dog right now. A lot of stuff coming up. I mean, it's summer. Oh, we had the Wales team come in. So I play rugby for a local club here in Milwaukee. So we actually had a team from the country of Wales come to Milwaukee as a part of their tour through Nashville, Louisville, and then Milwaukee. So they're here for a weekend. We took them out on the town Friday night. We visited a local favorite, Trinity, to really show them what Milwaukee's like.
Wow.
It's been a while since I've been there.
Yeah, it's good to hear.
Then we played a really rough and tumble match against them. They like to hit and they like to fight. On Saturday, we played a match. Then we took them to the Bavarian Brew House in Glendale just for a nice social. Big part of rugby is playing all out, fighting. Scratch and clawing, playing a competitive rugby match, and then you take them, to your bar. You give them food, you give them beer, and then you hang out, you socialize. And when these teams tour, you also trade your kits or your uniforms. And like so they had like for their tour, they had polos, t-shirts, shorts, jerseys. So you trade, some of our local Milwaukee Barbarians gear, you trade with their gear. So you have like,
that's awesome.
Gear and sets from all the other teams that you've played, whether it's in different states or different countries. So that's a cool part of our culture.
Yeah, it's amazing. Nice.
Yep. So that's kind of what we had going on. Otherwise, if you found value in the information we just covered here in the Milwaukee area, please subscribe. Hit that bell notification button so you know when we post our next market update. Also, give us a follow out there on the social medias, which we mentioned at the beginning of the podcast, where you can find us there. Give us a thumbs up, comment below if you enjoyed listening or if you want us to add more details in the future. Thanks. We'll be back next month for your real estate market update.
Bye, guys.